record the meeting as well. I will do that next time at the start, and I will also add on the AI capture on here as well. Just give me one moment. I'm just going to stop share the screen for a second, just to get that. It's easier to do it when it's not in a share screen mode. There we go. So all these videos will be recorded, and you guys will have the opportunity to watch them at a later date as well. And then I'll just upload them and give you guys a private link via email on that. Okay, so let's talk about this concept of trust in a business. All right, so this is a really great quote. The supreme quality for a leader is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, no matter whether it is on a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office. If a man's associates find him guilty of being phony, if they find that he lacks forthright integrity, he will fail. His teachings and actions must square with each other. The first great need, therefore, is integrity and a higher purpose. That was Eisenhower. He's the one who led the World War II effort towards liberating Fortress Europa. Pretty powerful quote there. Okay, so I'm going to kind of throw this out there with the concept. First of all, what's the point of trust? What's the point behind it? Just unmute.
I think it just helps unify teams in a way. It's that unspoken thing where you know that the guy in the next office or the guy across from you has your back, and that's how it is for me now, like with Duncan and stuff like that. There's things that can go unspoken. Yeah, it's super important.
I think trust is the foundation of any relationship, whether it's business or in real life. So I think if you can establish a level of trust with the people that you work with or that you lead, at that point, a lot of the initial barriers are gone when it comes to dealing with tasks and things of that nature, because then you trust each other. You're both adults most of the time, so you understand that you're going to get things finished. And I think that base level of trust is super important across any aspect of life, especially business. And it's really hard because, as we all know, hiring people, bringing people on, there's a lot of misses, right? So it's tough to add the trust factor in there when you have a lot of swing and misses. But if you as an individual have integrity and do what you say, then you should hold everybody to the same standard. And if you do what you say, then it's on them to do their part.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so a couple of really good pieces of input there. The first thing I want to talk about trust is this idea of trust on a dimmer switch. People use trust as a dimmer switch. They're like, I kind of trust you like 37%. It's like, that's not possible, guys. Or I trust you 64%. It's like, when? How? It makes no sense. Trust is on or off. It's either at 100% or it's off. And here's the best part about it, whether it is on or it is off. Both have accountability. I will trust you, and I will have you be accountable for outcome. And I don't trust you, and I'm going to hold you accountable for outcome. There's no difference. The benefit of trust on the other side of it is that trust creates a trust capital bank account. And when you have trust capital bank account, you can have healthy conflict in a team. If you don't have trust capital, you're not going to have the ability to have a healthy team, because I don't know that after we start to, if we have very little trust, two things are going to happen on the other side of a conflict. I don't know if we're going to last the other side of this conflict. I'm going to be like, you know what? This business objective is coming into play. This team dynamic is coming into play. I don't really trust this person. And if I bring up something and it shatters the relationship, we don't have anything on the other side. So one of two things happen. I either get overtly hostile because I don't really trust you, so I'm okay with ditching the relationship anyways, or I don't trust you and I don't want to take the risk of ditching the relationship. Either one is not good in a business setting. They're not good in a team. It doesn't work because I'm either going to hold back or I'm going to push forward. So if we want to have the ability to navigate conflict, navigate challenges, deal with team objectives, it would be fantastic to be able to do that. You have to have trust. Otherwise, you're going to end up with conflict avoidance or hostile open conflict. Those are two things that are just definitely going to happen. So that it's about survivability. Can we survive the other side of a hard decision or a hard project outcome? So if you have a business where you don't have trust in your team, or a company where it's not really present or whatever else, and you are in a prime position, like you're in an executive role, you're the leader, you're the owner, you're running it, you're the director, total wake-up call, you created it. There's no one else to blame. Like you got to own it. Like if you've got a core person on your team and you guys are no longer in a trust relationship, you got to own it. So this idea of trust is just absolutely massive. So here's a quick question for you guys. Are you developing leaders in your organization, or are you developing bureaucratic rules following individual contributors with titles? You do not want the latter. But it's a serious question. Which one are you doing? And then what about the other side? Can you enhance your leadership development? Like what are you doing on that side of it as well? And then if you look at your business practices, everything from team meetings to operational inputs and reporting, have you put in systems in those processes that develop trust in your organization? Like, what would that look like for you? And if not, what's missing? So you have to be able to take that into account 100% of the time. If you who's been a part of a team that does not trust, that has a very little trust, where there's a lot of, yeah, Greg, are you open to speak to that a little bit?
I'm challenging myself to see if I am comfortable talking about it. It's actually happened in the last two exec groups that I've worked at. My current one, we struggle with it for sure. Let's cut me off if I'm not being brief here, Ed. My current company was founded by a bunch of guys that just wanted to make a mod for a very popular video game, and they're just a bunch of kids, basically like 20 somethings. And this game they made ended up making millions of bucks, and they started a company based out of it. And none of them had any real professional experience ever making games. So this company's been around now for 10 years, and some of those founders are still kicking around, and they're on the exec team, and they're in their early 30s, and they're helping to run a company that's 150 people. And the bulk of their career has been working at this very shoot from the hip kind of video game company, and they've never actually run a real company before. And they're part of the founders group, and we've got a CEO who's come on, who's trying to clean things up and mature the company. And what he's struggling with is on the board of directors and the shareholders. There's a whole bunch of company founders that can oust him at any given point in time. And there's still a couple of founders that are on the exec team. And the company founders that are on the exec team, great guys, mean well. They captured lightning in a bottle once, but the challenge of a company is just that repetition. Like, how can you create something that can continuously create successful products? And there's only so much pressure you can put on those founders on the exec team, because if you do that, then they might revolt with the rest of the founders that are on the board or in the shareholders, and get the CEO ousted. So there's this really awkward dynamic right now where the CEO is trying to mature the company, but can't really put the screws in the way he would like, So I'm helping broker that. I'm a part of that. I've worked with the CEO for over 15 years, so we're quite familiar with each other. So yeah, it's a big challenge, and there's this definite lack of trust, and we struggle with it. So yeah, that's where I'm currently sitting at, and we're trying to figure that one out.
Mm-hmm. Having a shared objective is absolutely vital. Like, what are we actually trying to achieve? And the amount of times that it's unclear on what a business is trying to achieve, or a business team or a business division is trying to achieve, is a major problem there as well. And then of course you've got the values of the team that lead into how that operates, because that becomes the guiding principle on how are you going to achieve those objectives. So clarity of objective and the values that lead you to those objectives are the two things that are probably not spoken about enough. And so what happens is it just turns into the mechanism of the doing, and everyone has a different opinion on how we're going to do it, but we're not even agreeing on what we're going to do in the first place. And so those kinds of things can really get in there. Now, when you come back to this idea of, do I trust this person? Okay, well, if I don't, like, how does that change my behavior? And so the ability to increase trust increases healthy conflict. I mean, Patrick Lencioni talks about that as well. Thanks for sharing that, Greg. Okay, so we know that trust is absolutely important. We know that core objectives are super important. I want to go into this concept of this thing called feedback analysis. So when we're making key decisions on objectives in our company, how are we making those? Like, who has decision-making power? For those of you who work with me directly, I've got this idea of, like, you've got the decision maker, who takes the action, and who has the verification step. Not knowing who the decision maker is immediately going to remove accountability. Like, it's like, okay, guys, we're going to launch this project. Boom, boom, boom. You're doing this. You're doing this. You're doing this. Okay, great, great. And people are now going off into the business, and they don't know what their decision-making power is. If they don't know what their decision-making power is, they don't know what their accountability is relative to that decision. It's just a guarantee that this is how it's going to operate. So this ability to get into clarity around that is vital. Let me bring up my keynote again here. One sec. That's my deck. Here we go. So I'm going to give you guys this one tool here. Okay, and this is called a key decision feedback analysis. When we're looking at key decisions, okay, there's a million decisions made every day. Like, hey, are we going to put the printer over there or not? That's not a key decision. I'm talking about key decisions in your business. Right now, if I asked anyone in the room, what were the key decisions that were made, and how did the expectation of the decision and the outcome of the reality of that decision, can you track that? Right? The likelihood's probably low. And so how do we improve this ability to track key decision making? So here's the criteria of what you need to know. What was the key decision? When was it originally decided? What was the expected outcome? This has to be discussed at the start of a meeting, or the launch of a project, or the launch of the key decision. If you're like, yeah, guys, we're going to make this thing happen, and no one knows what the expected outcome of the thing that you're trying to have as the decision, or it's unclear to you, you've lost accountability. You've lost clarity of outcome. And then what were the actual results? Now, remember, this is not about having 5,000 decisions in your company tracked on a spreadsheet. This is about your key decisions. Maybe there's like 2 or 3 a quarter, right? So if you had anywhere between 8 to 12, maybe 16 key decisions over the course of a year, can you look back and say, these are the key decisions we made? Were those the right decisions? Over the last quarter, can you do a review? Can you do an annual feedback analysis?
Edwin, question.
Yeah.
When you say the date, You made it seem as if the date was the initial conversation about the objective.
Correct.
Is that the date? So you can kind of hold accountability to the length of the episode or the length of the issue over the course of time. Is that what it is? So you can
Correct.
kind of, okay. All right.
Yeah. And then the cadence to check the result is elastic, because maybe you have a quarterly review, maybe you have a biannual review, maybe you have a specific project outcome meeting. So the outcome date is going to vary also based off of the quality of the decision. Like, is this a decision that we're not going to see the outcome for until 9 months from now? Or is this a decision we're going to see in 6 to 8 weeks?
So that date is kind of to revisit and say, hey guys, we touched on this in January. Why is it now August and we don't really have a result?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Or the expected outcome.
Got it.
So for example, let's say a key decision was hiring a director of sales. We're going to hire a director of sales. And we did that on May 2024. We put the exact date in there. I didn't put the exact date, but it's in the month of May 2024. We hired this new role. The org chart shifted. A sales team went underneath them, and a bunch of individual contributors went underneath that. What were we expecting them to do? We need to know. We want to say, okay, that sales director had the key decision of creating an outcome of increasing sales by 15%. Then we go with the actual result. So we look and we say, okay, we're going to monitor this over the course of 6 months and see what the outcomes are over the course of a year. And you say, okay, they increased the sales by 12%. Now you can go back and say, okay, where in the decision making was that lost? How do we end up fixing that? Was 15% a bad projection, or was there other factors? Was there interest rate in components? Was there a supply chain issue? You can look at all sorts of other details as to why that happened. But now you have a very clear thing. And over the course of a year, you're going to have all these key decisions and say, did we hit the mark? Did we not hit the mark? For example, we're going to launch a new website. Why? We decided that in June. The expected outcome of the new website was to increase traffic by 300%. We're not getting hits on our website. We want to increase traffic by 300%. Several months later, we look at it. Hey, look, website did really great. We increased traffic by 450%. We have to know, because otherwise we don't have accountability. And if we're doing milestone measurement of goals, we're not going to have something to compare it against. Here's another one. We added a new CRM into the company. We decided that in June. So we did the two things together. Launch new website. When people sign up on the website, it's going to be tied to our CRM. Okay, great. It's two key decisions at the same time. What did we want? We wanted to track sales conversion. We want 100% accuracy on sales conversion tracking with an increase of conversions by 2 points. 31% to 33%. But when we check on it, whenever that happens to be, next quarter, in the next 6 months, the website is functional, it's stable. We say, hey, listen, we're not tracking accurately. We're losing about 10% of our ability to track whether the conversions are happening or not for some reason. Someone's not managing it properly, whatever happens to be, and then we find out conversions are flat at 31%. If you do this key decision feedback and say, hey, these are the key decisions we're making in our company. Here's the date we made them. Here's the expected outcome. You can now decentralize your role as a CEO or as an executive a little bit. Because now you have something to hold the team accountable to, and this is what you're actually monitoring. It's a very different way of looking at it. Any questions about this? Like, if we're looking back at last fiscal year, and we're like, what decisions did we make? And we're like, and we're kind of looking up in the sky and kind of reflecting back on our memory of what those decisions were. I guarantee you're losing your ability to have not only your ability to have self accountability, but your ability to lead a team that is growing. It's going to get really hard.
I got a question for you, Ed.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you do when someone deflects accountability?
Well,
So
first of all, did they know that the accountability lived with them?
they should. Uh, I think it's for most, it's pretty obvious that there's one particular individual where there's been two really key things that have not been delivered, and directly within this person's purview.
Mhm.
So I basically have to give that individual feedback as a teammate that, hey man, like you let the team down. He doesn't report to me; he reports to the
Mhm.
CEO. I'm on the exec team with him, but yeah, two pretty darn big misses that have really impacted us, and he's sort of pointing at other people, saying that's actually that person, it's not me, despite the fact that the folks responsible for the deliverables report into him.
Mhm.
So it's clearly his under his purview. So yeah, that's one of the current challenges that I'm faced with.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you're looking at a failure on a project when it comes to accountability, you can immediately go and do a little bit of a investigation, right? You can say, okay, cool. Like, what were we expecting as far as this project was concerned? Um, who had authority over and control over its outcome? And then you just say, listen, who owns this? Like who owns it? Someone's got to own it. And if he's like, well, it was because of this, whatever. Okay, well, if you're not going to take accountability for it, how do you have the authority to manage it? Those two things have to be in balance. You can't have the authority to do something and no accountability on the other side. Then we'll either have to remove your authority, but the easier thing is to put in the accountability piece back into the equation. If that's not happening, then that person needs a deeper set of investigation on how is it that they're deflecting, why are they being defensive. So they want the reward of the win, but they don't want the accountability of the fail. Well, then where does the fail live? It should be the other way around. The team owns the win and the executive owns the failure. That's a fundamental leadership 101 quality. All the wins belong to the team. All the failures belong to me. If that is the philosophy, you'll be fine. It's like, oh man, you know what? You guys did so great with this project. Yeah, the team owned it. Hey, listen, you guys missed the mark on this. You didn't end up getting the acquisition on that client. Yeah, I've got it. I own it. If that has to become a part of the fabric of your culture. But
It's kind of a comment slash question for me, Edwin, on that point. You know, with Gregan's question, it relates obviously directly to what you started with, or what we started with around trust. And you mentioned Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So obviously the trust being the pillar or the foundation of his concept around that being the load bearing beam for every successful team. My question is, do you believe that prescribing a book like that to a team, like, hey, I'm going to send you guys a copy of this book, you need to read it, and then let's get back and discuss it, whatever it is, every week or a couple of weeks from now, do you find that kind of action can help realign a team if there is, foundational breakdowns around trust and other, conflicts in the office?
it can, but it would be missing one other piece, and that is a rollout of what it means to the business. The amount of times that people talk about what they're doing as opposed to how they want to do it is out of balance. Like a team that talks about how do we manage conflict is going to be a better team than what conflict are we managing. Because then what conflict they manage is going to have a set of rules of engagement that they're all going to follow. How do we want to manage this project? Hey guys, do we want to be super aggressive on this project or do we want to be very collaborative? You have to define those things early and upfront. The better you can do that, how do we want to go through this? Then the what becomes way easier. So yes, absolutely, getting a little bit of a shared thing, but then someone has to effectively roll that out in a weekly meeting or a quarterly meetup or whatever happens to be. Yeah, it's a good step though. Okay, we're going to go to some of the questions that were submitted. And so the way this is going to work is If you remember your question, I want you to ask it. But I'm going to kind of work through the question with you a little bit. This is going to be challenging for some of you because I'm going to ask you some pretty hard questions in response to the question that you asked. But the point of this is for us to get into a higher level of critical thinking on this. Okay. So I'm going to go with the Jules question that he submitted. Jules and I have been working together for, I guess, almost 3 years now, become close friends as well. Jules, first of all, just tell a little bit about your business, like what sector you're in, how big your team is.
Hi everyone, I'm Jules. I own Coastal Design Landscaping. I've had the company for almost 20 years. Smaller scale residential installations. Been through ups and downs. Company grew and shrunk. Now we're on a bit of a low again, mainly due to HR challenges, which is my main issue. So I'm back on the tools, which is a terrible thing for the business. Ed helped us to try and grow and sort out a lot of solutions and implement systems, which I thank you, Edwin. It's been extremely helpful. Trying to remember my question. I think it was maybe remind me.
I can read it out. Okay, so the one that you submitted was I struggle to put new things that I learn into action. For example, I learned that it's important to know your basic numbers and check them daily. However, I find it difficult to weave it into my routine. Are there methods with applying this so that my daily routines and operations are tied to these things? So, I know a little bit about your business, obviously, and I think one of the things that is a struggle is the fact that depending on the organization of your structure, who are you reflecting against the desire to look at those numbers? So in a larger team, you have to kind of share a lot more information. And so when you have to share that information, you're being held to task to bring that information forward and report it in a way that everyone could kind of look at. So, when you're looking at, say, ARAP, checking them daily or whatnot, one of the things that I would push for is, you have administrative support, right, with Jan and that as well. Is what would be the daily KPIs or the weekly KPIs that you would want to just have on your desk? Like, imagine that you weren't in a outdoor landscaping equipment company and hardscaping company, and you went out and you basically walked into your office and there was a sheet of paper. What's on that sheet of paper for you to know what's going on in the business?
Is this a question?
Yeah. Like what would be on that sheet of paper? What would be 3 or 4 key numbers that you would want to know so that you knew exactly what was going on in your business? Not 10 or 12 or 50, and not one that is kind of living in a bubble. What are like 3 or 4 key numbers?
Yeah, I guess, first of all, the obvious profit and loss in the last week even. It's a little tougher because our invoicing is sporadic. Our projects take few weeks. So the reflection, it would be nice to see quarterly, monthly, and weekly on that. Cash flow. And that's probably another department where I would need assistance or help, is understanding it better. I feel like a lot of times we operate maybe a little bit blindly with great hopes, but less accountability on the follow-ups.
There's one report that I've been talking about. It's called the mobility cash flow report. Super simple. Effectively, you take your operating account and how much money came in, how much money went out, and what's the balance. Cash flow is one of the things that gets obfuscated. And ideally, your cash flow balance is consistently growing because cash will solve a lot of issues. right? It's like, oh, okay, hang on, a truck broke down. We can deal with that. Okay, or this is going on, or I need to hire for this role, or we've got an expenditure here, or I've got this new project that I want to bid on, but it's got a negative cash flow cycle of 3 months. So all that kind of stuff is going to be tied in. But if you don't know the in out, that's one number that's super easy to get, and you can get that number every morning. How much money went out, how much money came in, and what's the operating balance?
Over how long of a period are you talking about?
Every day. Every day. It's called a cash flow mobility report.
Mm-hmm.
It's three gross numbers. It's not ARAP. It's not all this complicated stuff. It's how many dollars actually came into the bank account, how many dollars went out of the bank account, and what's the existing balance.
Gotcha.
It's a very, very straightforward report, but it's going to give you a lot of idea of the throttle that your company is currently at. I would start there. The second part of this is, can you formalize on your schedule something where you're setting up an independent solopreneur meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have a team meeting, right? So that where you're going to be talking about these numbers with a divisional manager or anything like that. So, or your controller or whatnot. So can you set up your own meeting where you've scheduled out a block of time? Is it 30 minutes for you to look at your own numbers, as opposed to it just sort of falling away into the ether?
Yeah, and I guess this was the main reason for my question. I think I just used the number thing as an example,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you create these systems or create systems that create accountability to follow up on those great things that you hear and learn and try to develop on? So many times I heard amazing things, amazing ideas, and ways to develop and ways to grow. And you adhere to it for a short period of time, and then it fades away. And that's been my struggle over the years, or on certain things or some things.
Okay, so accountability. So what I want you to do is think about what one or two of those things that you wanted to integrate in the last 3 to 6 months that is now tapered off. Think about that, and before the end of the meeting, I want you to type it into the chat, and we're going to hold you accountable for next week.
All right.
For next month, for next month's meeting, to be like, did you do the thing? And use some and don't create something new, right? We can get stuck on shiny new. You've already had something that mattered to you. Let's come back to it. Okay. Avril, you submitted a question. You first of all introduce yourself really quick here and just let us know what industry you're in.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Ed, for having me. My name is Avril, and I own Smidge Marketing and Media. I'm a sole proprietor, and it's a marketing agency. I kind of do a little bit of web design and branding, and I handle small businesses, social media. So that's kind of what I do, is my passion. And my question I answered in that link was, how do I turn, because I have a lot of interest. So how do I turn kind of like that interest into leads? Because I feel like, everybody, when I meet them, they're all gung-ho about, yeah, let's do it. Let's get you on board. And then all of a sudden I'll send my price list, and then it's like crickets, and then I don't hear back. So that was kind of my question.
Yeah. Really great question. So the two things that I would identify, the first one is, in your expiration meeting, are you getting what we would call a conceptual agreement, where you're getting a scale somewhere in there of what that interest level is? Like, is the interest level, so let's say that there is interest, so it's not like zero interest, but there is interest. Do you have an idea of where that sits on the interest scale?
Yeah, I think like they're interested in bringing me on. Like they need help. They're overwhelmed. As we all know, social media is ever changing, ever growing. And then all of a sudden it's like they can't do it because I feel like they realize they don't have the budget, or I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Mhm. Okay, so there's a couple of things that come up for that. One of them is identifying to make sure that are they a qualified buyer. The amount of times we get into a conversation with someone who is not actually a qualified buyer, and qualified buyer has several things. One, they have the ability to spend asset for the company. Now, a lot of people, when they build their annual budget, they're not building in a budget for social media manager. But do they have the ability to move money in a budget? So do they have the authority and the decision-making power to reallocate those funds? You got to figure that out in your exploration. If they don't have that decision-making power, then that's not the person that you need to be speaking to. It's got to be somebody else. The second one is the value proposition for what it is that they're going to get. So if we go to the market with our need, hey, I need a client, they're not going to buy from us. But if we go to the market with the idea of, hey, what problem am I actually fundamentally solving? And you really drill down on that problem, like the requirement is that you want what? Like, so for example, when we looked at the key decision, what expected outcome are they getting? And then what is the fail point if they don't fulfill that decision? Like, what will their life continue to look like if they fail that decision? A third component here is going to be, what's the dollar cost for them to manage it themselves versus for you to manage it? And so are you competitive relative to their gross revenue?
Right.
If their gross revenue is not big enough, it might be cheaper for them to do it on their own. However, if their dollar value for them is, like, I'll give you a prime example. Okay, so there was a team that I was working with, and they, a couple of you might have heard this story before. They had to clean out a storage facility, and the operations manager was supposed to assign the sort of the lowest wage people to go clean out the storage facility, and he forgot to do it. Like, he didn't schedule it. There was supposed to be 3 team members. They were supposed to go get the storage facility cleaned up. So I showed up, and who's cleaning out the storage facility? The ops manager and the sales director. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're cleaning out the storage facility. It was scheduled for today. Like, junk removal is coming. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What's the average sale for your sales director? And they're like, oh, $25,000 is the average sale. Great. How many sales does your sales director make in a week? 4. Okay, so they make 4 sales in a week. And how many of those calls are they getting in a day? And so we did the math. And effectively, for the 3 hours, it was costing them as opportunity cost $25,000 to clean out a storage facility. So if you can designate what the opportunity cost is loss and really make that clear for the client, like, this is your opportunity cost that you're losing by spending time on something that A, you're not as good at, B, I can do way faster for you, and your return on investment is going to be way higher. Because if you're in the biz dev role, or you're in the role where you're trying to build out this project or team, and for every hour you're not spending on that, your actual cost is here, and you can get a little bit more mathematical about it. Because I think a lot of times, especially in your sector, there's not enough math discussed about what it means for the customer outside of the internal metrics, like, oh, you get this many impressions and blah 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 blah. No, what's the math for their business? If you can incorporate that a little bit, that might help your close factor a little bit. But do not talk to someone who cannot make a decision.
True. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let me go to another question. Okay, let's go here. Bruno, you sent in a question. You said, do you remember your question? You want to read it out, or do you want me to read it back?
You can read it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead. And I'll obviously introduce yourself also.
Oh, sorry. I'll introduce myself, but I don't remember the exact wording of the question, but
that's fine.
My name is Bruno. I'm the owner of SEMA Mechanical. We been in business for about 10 years now. Looking to grow a little bit, but looking to grow healthy and sort of keep it tight, small group. But yeah, just trying to really hone in on like what's important to me as a business owner, as a sort of husband, as a father kind of thing. So that's what I'm kind of looking for here.
Okay, so can you just redefine it very, very clearly as far as like what is it as far as the issue that you're trying to resolve?
So yeah, I want to grow. I've sort of established that I want to grow to a certain degree. I just don't know how far I want to grow to the point where I'm able to spend time with family and, pay for the things that need to be paid for, and have the life that I want to live. But I don't want to grow to the point where the business is consuming me and, I don't have time for the things in my personal life that are important to me. So finding that balance, I feel like it's been tough to, to either be all in and then jump into it and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to invest my life into growing this business, but I don't want to grow to the point where now I have this big machine, this big beast that I can't step away from because it's grown too big.
Okay. Now, I one of the things that you kind of mentioned in there is that is there a specific point where that gets resolved? In the thing. There is one of these components is who else can do what you can do and who can't do what you can do. Now there's a very simple matrix that you can do for this. On a sheet of paper, you write down, the 7, 8, 9 things that you actually do and the percentage of time that you spend doing them. So, okay, well, I'm doing admin, that's 15% of my time. I'm doing lead generation, that's 10% of my time. I'm doing this, that's like 45% of my time. And then on the column beside that, you write down what your ideal percentages are. So you now end up with a breakdown of the stuff that you like to do. Now, some people love being, quote unquote, on the box. Like they still love being in the business. That's fine. If I did this recently with a team and, someone was like, I actually don't want to do operations. We're like, what? We thought you wanted to do operations. They're like an executive in this company. They're like, no, I want to supervise because I love working with the team on the creative part of the project. We're like, oh, no one knew it. Now, so you want to know what that is. The second you get that breakdown of, okay, well, I'm at 10% here, I want it to be 45%. I'm at 50% here, I want that to be 0. I'm at 12% here, I want that to be, whatever that number is. You're going to add up with 100 points on both sides. And then you got to implement a plan of how would I actually make that happen? But you have to have clarity of what that outcome is. On the other side of it is there's a price. The second you want to get your business to a certain level, there's a price. And a lot of times this idea of working on the business versus in the business is out of balance. The initial stages of getting your business to a point of stability has to occur where you are actually in the business 85, 90% of the time. That's a must because you're the one that understands the system. Then you start to pull out and go, okay, well, specific to this, someone else can manage that. Specific to this, someone can manage that. And you have to measure that relative to your to the goals of what you want. At the same time, Graham and I were talking about this. There was a podcast we listened to recently. In North America, when someone asks, what do you do? The person always responds with, oh, I'm a owner for this, or I run this company, or I'm a manager here, or whatever happens to be. In Europe, you ask someone what they do, and they say, oh, I go motorcycle riding through the Alps. Oh, no, what do you do for work? So, like, there's this whole difference in mindset between what's your self-identity attached to. But this idea of a teeter-totter is also very dangerous. That my life lives over here and my work lives over here. It's not a teeter-totter. You're actually the triangle in between. Like you can actually remove the teeter-totter part of the equation. Just make yourself the fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a matter of which side are you focused on. But every time I'm at work and I want to be at home, and every time I'm at home and I want to be at work, you got to be more present and settle into where you actually are in the moment. Okay, great. Yeah, really. Was that helpful?
Yeah, no, it's something that I gotta really explore.
There's one other component here, and that is that if you don't have an inner circle, if you don't have a specific person beside you and an inner circle that you can rely on, that you can start getting those people
Yeah.
to do, your ability to scale is going to be really, really diminished, because you're always going to be putting yourself in a position to do it all. And it takes time to build those relationships. And how do you get the criteria of who those people are, and how do you include them into your business? Ty, you and I talked about this recently, right? Like how do you get those people who are going to be around you that are going to carry that load? And that's super important, especially for the ones that are living the ethos of your company.
Yeah, I think that's been the hard part, is finding somebody that is willing to buy in and take that accountability. Because right now it's, as I'm sure most of you guys know, it's 100% owned by you. So how do you find somebody that wants to take the accountability for a business that you've grown for, this X amount of years?
Yeah. A little bit of this is that, do they think it belongs to you and not to them? If it belongs to you and not to them, and they don't feel like they have influence and impact and all this other sorts of stuff, they're not going to trust that they're going to have something, if that's the thing that matters to them. And people at that level, they want to have involvement and have a higher level of execution. So that comes back to the trust thing as well. Okay, so we talked about trust. We talked about key decision feedback analysis. I would incorporate this into your teams right out of the gate, even if you are just the only one who's running your operations. Write down your key decisions. What are you expecting to get as an outcome? You're going to get better at decisions, and you're going to get better at being more discerning around what decisions you're making in your company. Okay, the next date is going to be November 29th. One of the things that we talked about at the very, very beginning was, what is the goal that you want to achieve between now and next month and see the needle move? You got to write that down. It's like, Zach, write that down. April, write that down. Gabe, write that down. Right? Write down, what is that goal that you want to see the needle move? And then what are you going to do to achieve that? So for Bruno, is it about distribution of time? For Jules, is it about checking in on your KPIs and reporting? For Averill, is it about this who is a qualified buyer, and how do I get to that decision making quicker in my exploration calls? So yeah, awesome. Jules, you grab that. Simone, if you can capture that as well on the chat, that'd be fantastic. Okay, we got like 1 minute left. Someone we haven't quite heard from. Zach, key takeaway for you today?
No, that was good. Yeah, just seeing where kind of everyone's at and see where their potential is pretty cool. Yeah, for Bruno, just keep pushing, I guess. Don't be scared. Raise your prices, hire guys, and keep rocking. That's what I would say.
Yeah, nice.
Don't be scared. Charge the customer what you're worth. Raise your prices, hire guys, move forward, keep pushing.
Yep.
Buy that other van. Let's roll, baby.
Totally.
I
30
agree.
seconds. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to say something to Bruno as well. It's like when you're at a certain size, you think that growing equals naturally. It just doubles your amount of work, doubles your amount of responsibility. It can if you allow it to own you. But if you're working with Edwin or what, like I've been able through the work that we've done, like I have a fairly substantial size company and I work, 35, 40 hours a week, and I'm able to do everything I want to with my kid, and I'm able to do all the things I want to do. It doesn't run my life, right? And there's ways to, if you want to have a chat, man, I'd be happy to talk to you about my journey through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's fantastic. All right, guys,
Thank
we're
you.
at time. I want to be respectful of your guys' workflow. We'll see you in a month. Anyone who wants to reach out, fire me a text or a message, an email. We'll see you in a month. And if I'm working with you, I'll see you sooner than that.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Edwin.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Thanks,
Edwin.
Edwin.
Thanks very much, Edwin.
Thanks,
See you
Edwin.
guys.
Thanks, Edwin.
Thank you.
Yeah.